All right, we're back. It's been a little bit of a summer hiatus here with the podcast, but getting into the off season here, get to have some fun guests on. So join me today. He's the director of the Werth Institute over at UConn. It's David Noble. So David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance to drop in. Love the t-shirt too, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's our guy 22 Threads, mediocre Dan here on Twitter. So love the shout out there. David, I want to start. I know if you're active, people are active on social media. They know who you are. They know what you do. They've interacted with you most likely. But for those maybe learning about you for the first time or not 100% sure what you and the Werth Institute do, why don't you give us just a little bit of an intro and background into what you do?
Yeah. So the University of Connecticut in 2018 launched what's called the Werth Institute for Entrepreneurship. And I was the inaugural director of that institute, funded by Peter Werth, right? If you remember
Yeah.
back, I think it was late 2017, there was a big thing about 22.5 million. It's now, over 30 million, and growing, of Peter Werth's money, plus other people have supported this out of our alumni base. And what we try to do is we're not here to just start startups. We're here to bring entrepreneurial opportunity and education to all the students at UConn, every single one of them. And that's where, if you go back and you look, you'll see there's a day that Twitter account started, right? And it was right in alignment with the day that they said, all right, let's move forward on NIL and support our student athletes here at the University of Connecticut through the Werth Institute.
So being on campus, I know you work a lot with the athletes. Just give a high level of what you do with these athletes, the classes you're involved with, that you're a professor in, and just give a little background there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are different classes across the School of Business, Communications Department, Journalism Department, DMD. There's a lot of different classes that people teach that help students build businesses, help them become entrepreneurs, and we encourage that growth, whether it's in accounting, marketing, or entrepreneurship. And in entrepreneurship specifically, we've been really hyper focused on what NCAA calls name, image, and likeness as an entry point for any students to be able to start their entrepreneurial journey. And that, I think, is one of the differences between the University of Connecticut and almost every other university.
Yeah, so let's dive right into the name, image, and likeness. I mean, you've obviously been in the forefront of it. It seems like it's still a little bit of the Wild West out there with things changing constantly. What's the NIL experience been like? Is you've been trying to best understand it, get UConn athletes engaged with it, and realize the potential that they have with name, image, and likeness?
So athletes have been selling their name, their image, their likeness for tens of years, right? Like, this is not new. John Elway is probably the largest car dealer in the world, right? And
Yeah.
he's never physically been out there selling cars unless it's for a photo op. So like that whole concept has existed for a long time. With cell phones, with social media, the idea that someone can use their name, image, and likeness to start a business, like maybe the Connecticut Scoreboard podcast,
Yeah.
that is much more new and fresh, and the tools to do so have come down in price, right? Like, setting up
Yeah.
a podcast is hundreds of dollars, if that, at this
Yeah.
point, but it can go up to tens and tens of thousands. So, that idea is what sparked the name, image, and likeness rule change at the NCAA. I think it was South Florida. Maybe there was a football player that had run afoul for monetizing their YouTube channel with millions and millions of,
Yeah, the kicker
and
is
Carl and
Central
Johnny,
Florida, I think. Yeah.
Central Florida. Yeah. And I mean, I think a couple of years further down the line, and Johnny Mack, the trick shot quarterback at UConn, would have been in that group as well. And like, I always look at Renee Montgomery as just a great representation of this concept. Well, that concept and that pathway to entrepreneurship is now a mile wide, and universities themselves have not altered the way that they teach entrepreneurship to take advantage of these opportunities. And so UConn was well on its way to doing that, entirely separate from name, image, and likeness at the NCAA level. It allows more women to get in, more students of color. It's just more inclusive pathway than saying, hey, go live in the basement of your parents' house for the first 6 years after you graduate college and, code out an app, and then, maybe you'll make something, right? And I think that constant monetization, which we were very interested in, it suddenly came rushing to the forefront.
It seems like UConn has done a great job of these name, image, and likeness deals that they've had actually be name, image, and likeness deals as I think things were intended to be in terms of, hey, they're performing, whether it's a cameo or signing an autograph or something, making an appearance in exchange for that money versus some people have thought, hey, this is just a way to, legalize the recruiting bag that everyone used to hear about, being dropped in a shoebox or what. How have you seen UConn athletes starting to take advantage of name, image, and likeness and doing it the right way?
Yeah, so I mean, I think our women's basketball team was ready on day one. Not the team itself, but the players. And the players were led by Paige for sure, right?
Yeah.
And this is someone that is newsworthy, noteworthy, and a master user of social media and building her own brand. It does not come naturally to everyone,
Right.
but for sure that platform itself, because of its TV ratings, because of its notoriety, the women's basketball team, they were able to really take advantage of that out of the gate. And they drove that first year heavily. So UConn kept showing up in the news because of that. And other players and other schools and other teams were looking around, generally saying, what's going on? And I think that bag really was light on the first year in most places. By the second year, you started to see the collectives emerge and start to spend more money. We at UConn made a very conscious decision. David Benedict was in the room, the provost was in the room, and myself made a very conscious decision that this was actually an educational opportunity for our student athletes to prepare them for the next 50, 60, 70 years of their life. Yeah. And so it just provides a real platform to take their education and start to gain experience that's valuable. And I think you'll see Aubrey Griffin doing some stuff this year that drives maybe a future media career, right? Start to get in repetitions, right? Like, and I think they can now do that and receive money. It's hugely transformative in the education of our student athletes for sure.
I know that there's policies around NIL have been rather fluid. There have been a lot of changes, in different states as this whole issue has evolved. I know one thing that played out, especially at UConn, the past year when you saw a guy like Adama Sanogo not really being able to take advantage of NIL opportunities, being an international student. Is that the next phase of NIL evolution where you see these international players being able to take advantage of these opportunities?
I don't know the answer to that really. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Adama was a very specific situation.
Yeah.
But we have, I want to say, 5 players on our women's team and 4 on our men's team right now that are on F1 visas. We have numerous football players on F1 visas. Look at our hockey team, men's and women's, right? So, but to get more to the question that you asked, though, that's a work issue around Homeland Security. Homeland Security and immigration laws have to be changed to allow them to fully take part in it. Now, where I think UConn has been a leader is in understanding what those laws are and what a student athlete's options are with regard to working in Mali, right?
Yeah.
There's no rule stopping Adama from doing nil with regard to the NCAA. It's U.S. immigration law that says he wasn't allowed to work here. And
Right.
so, but in Mali, he can work. And that's why you see Nika Mule doing cameo when she's in Europe, right? Like she
Yeah.
has a work visa in Europe. So I think that, she's able to do deals, and now you're starting to see Dorka do a lot more deals because she's in the WNBA and has a work visa to do it. And so, and you can see she's rep by Wasserman with Paige, and she's going to be doing modeling. She's going to be doing a ton of stuff, and she's a really great kid. So, I think where we differed probably than most universities is we aggressively sought options for our players that allowed them to take advantage of the rules, and then educated our fan base, companies involved with that fan base, and really spent a lot of time and effort making sure we complied with federal law, federal and NCAA rules. And, again, David Benedict was absolutely at the forefront of that, right? And saying, and you could hear it from our players. And, you go way back with UConn. So you've heard in previous administrations, previous coaching staffs, accusations of tone deafness or, UConn not supporting the players in the way that maybe we should. And I think this spring on this run, you heard our players saying UConn's doing everything in their power to be able to do it. But the law is the law.
Makes sense there. Yeah. As you talk about the whole name, image, and likeness, I know you brought up the idea of collectives earlier. For those who maybe aren't as familiar, can you get just a little bit of a background of what a collective is and then how those collectives are playing a role at UConn?
Yeah. So I think, in the athletic department and some of the folks over there handle the day-to-day interaction with the collectives themselves. But 10,000 foot view, a collective is exactly that. It's a group of people that form a company, whether nonprofit or for profit. They put money into that, make investments, and try to find ways to generate revenue for student athletes at a particular school. Mark D'Amelio and the D'Amelio Huskies Collective has one approach, and Bleeding Blue for Good and the team over there, they have another approach, right? And I think both have been successful. We won a national championship in men's basketball, right? Like that happened. I think that's ultimately the measure of success of your collective is your team winning. It's not how much money are you putting in players' pockets. Arkansas is a great example of a team that put far more money into players' pockets than UConn, but they were all smiles and giggles after losing by 30 in Las Vegas. If you were did you come to the game? I was there.
No.
I could see it.
No, I wasn't in that one, but
the team was they were hardly put out that they lost. They couldn't wait to get back to the casino, right? And I mean, I think there is a difference between just turning over money and paying players versus being part of that player's education and support and growth to become the professionals that they desire to be. I mean, I think this is an in-between stop, right?
I think that's an interesting point you make, whereas you're not just writing a check to these players, but take me through some of the other benefits that these players are getting through participation with a collective through these deals that are coming out of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're participating in community activities, building PR. I think when you look at Adama particularly, his confidence on the work that he did trying to build a brand last year shined through in those interviews. And, according to him, that was something that was commented on by NBA teams going through. is that he had this brand of someone that they wanted associated with their team, right? So you can start to be intentional. You can partner with folks like D'Amelio to think through what it is, how do you sell it, how do you distribute it, how do you monetize it?
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned from Mark is you don't just monetize based on top dollar revenue. Like that's a bad strategy. Most of Hollywood, most of that monetization machine is designed to make the content creator do whatever work necessary to get the most money.
Yeah. I'm going to take a quick break from the interview to tell you about my friends at Martin Rosol's Meats. This fourth generation Connecticut family business produces kielbasa, hot dogs, sausages, and deli meats using Martin Rosol's very own original recipes. Their products can be found in grocery stores, delis, restaurants, and hot dog stands throughout the state. And if you're looking for your fill right away, check out their retail store in New Britain. For more information, visit martinroselsinc.com and go support a UConn fan-owned business. And now, back to the interview.
And so he's got a very different approach that he's taken with D'Amelio, and he's brought it to our students too, is that like maybe this is the time and the activity where you get the money you need, you start to build a nest egg, but you build that brand equity for the future because that goes with you from each stop.
Hey, I know you've worked with UConn student athletes for a while here. As this whole name, image, and likeness changes that have come to the game, have you seen them, get excited not only just for the fact that they're able to make a little bit of money now, but what these, what you were just mentioning in terms of building that brand equity, building a voice, in what that means for them? How excited do you see these kids about it?
I mean, I think it's in alignment with the type of players that most teams at UConn recruit. Because you're not going, I saw this morning, it was there was like one and done player in UConn history with, they're intentionally not recruiting one and dones, right? They're intentionally recruiting people that are good people and bring the work ethic necessary. They're also, regardless of which sport you're going to, including like field hockey, they're recruiting athletes who want to be professional athletes.
Yeah.
Their job is to sell tickets. Their job is to get eyeballs on. And the best way they can do that is perform on the court and build a brand off the court, right? Or field, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so many athletes take the same approach, that this is additive to what they do in their sports career. It makes them a better professional basketball player. It makes them a better professional football player. We've been working with a lot of football players lately, and you can see a number of these guys are going to the NFL next year. There's two guys in particular that are they're gonna be going, and they want to know what they're doing on appearances, social, TV, right? Like, how do we generate that revenue? I had a mentor, an alumni, talk to a student athlete. He wants to own franchises someday, right? He said, average football career is 2.5 years. I have to do something on top of that. And if he makes a couple $1 million in that 2 years, getting a franchise and owning a business moving forward is not a bad idea. So finding alumni that are in that business and connecting them with our players, right? Like they can learn, connecting with business people, the athletes, they may not know the great alumni that do business at UConn. And, they can mentor them, they can involve them. There's a lot of opportunity for that type of activity.
Yeah, no, it seems like there's some just great opportunities here. I know, you in working with the athletes, I'm sure you're also working with the coaching staffs as well. How have they all come along with this name, image, and likeness? Because it's certainly a completely different aspect of recruiting and management that they've had to adjust to as well.
Yeah, I think again, the women's basketball team, it was just part and parcel.
Yeah.
They've been very, very open, and it's just, this is players do this sort of stuff, right? Paige is taking down full things. Buick is coming on campus for AZ, right? So I think they just, it was a little bit more natural for them on that pathway. But yeah, football, basketball, men's basketball coaches really embrace the support that they're getting, feel the need to win in that room as well, right? I think,
Yeah.
and like I said, winning it means something different than just having maximum dollars in the space.
Right.
And I think a lot of our other coaches are coming along now, starting to see it's becoming more routine. They're starting to see it as part of the recruiting process. And what do we do, and how do we support you in your goals along those lines? Not just how do we find you a
Yeah.
small amount of revenue, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the key. If you want to be a professional women's soccer player, you've got to find $50,000 to $60,000 extra revenue in your life. And
Yeah.
so you can start practicing that freshman year.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting topic, and this has been fun diving into some of these things here. I want to, as we kind of wrap here, talk to you a little bit about some UConn athletics stuff. I know you're a big proponent of Coach Mora. How excited are you for the football season we've got coming up?
I'm looking for 10 wins. Like, I want to win everything we do. And I called football, from Houston on the way to the airport, and said, I hope to be able to help and be more active, from the spring and the summer. It's a really exciting time for UConn football, and everything that we hoped for when we hired Coach Mora has come
Yeah.
true, plus a whole bunch more, right? And I
Yeah.
think the NFL pedigree, it just can't be discounted. He's one of the true NFL coaches coaching in college, and that matters.
Absolutely. Outside of the national championship that we just saw back in April, your favorite UConn sports memory?
I mean, going to the White House this year was
Yeah.
was absolutely the coolest thing. Rochelle Rubin gave up her spot so I could attend, and it was amazing. But my favorite I have two of them. One was the Houston UConn game at Gamble. It was the first basketball game I ever went to for UConn, actually, right before
Okay.
the pandemic.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Um,
the last one. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I'm adamant. I'm a UConn exceptionalist, right? Like, UConn is the best university in the country in almost everything it does. It just doesn't even know it yet. And so, and whatever we set our minds to, we'll be great at. So that I think I remember that game. That place was rocking. The team was totally different. It was transformed. The coaching staff had them at a different level, and
Yeah.
I never really was much of a basketball fan, actually. And still, like, I watch UConn college basketball, and I'll watch the guys I coach, men's and women's, and or teach, and that's it. And
Yeah.
like, I don't watch NBA. I don't watch if UConn loses in a basketball game and they're out at the end of the year.
That's
I
it.
don't watch. That's it. So, like, that's the level of basketball fan I
Yeah.
am. But I remember that day going, "Oh, this is something. This is something different." College basketball as a drug is an exceptional drug. I
Yeah.
mean, that there's
The-
nothing. I've never experienced anything like that Final Four run. And I
yeah.
saw it first time with Book, and when Book was playing in that game, and we won. And like, I remember sitting there thinking to myself, "Oh, this is a completely pivotal moment in UConn history, because he's gonna win. Like, that
Yeah.
guy over there, he's got what it takes to build this team." And then we went to the Big East, and but then also the game, there was a game during the pandemic that Providence College came into our hockey rink and destroyed us in the Big East tournament. And I was so angry that we lost to that team. We were so much better than them. And then the following year to come out and get all the way to, like, this close to
Yeah.
winning the Hockey East championship, and being there in Boston, and sitting there. there's nothing I want more right now than to win that Hockey East championship this year. Like
There we go.
if you were to say the one thing I was hoping for coming up with this season, I think we're going to win 9, maybe 10 games in football. We're going to win our bowl game. We're going to be a very, very elite men's basketball team. We're going to challenge for the championship in women's. There's no doubt in my mind. Our field hockey team is going to be stellar. Our women's soccer team's off the charts. Baseball and softball is going to be better than we were, and baseball is going to be in the mix. But I want that Hockey East championship for the men and the women. If we win it both, that's it. This is a successful year.
All right. Well, you spoke it into happening here. So
how it happens.
That's how it works.
Every time I show up, we win.
I'll wrap and end with this one for you. I think one of the things I love is being a part of the UConn social media fan base there. You've been introduced to a lot of us here on Twitter and in social media. What's it been like getting to interact with this UConn fan base?
It's absolutely a great fan base. And, it was entirely intentional in conversations with David Benedict of, hey, we need to be leaning into this, right? Like David shows up, he starts calling you out if you don't have a spaces, I mean, think about that, right? Like the AD of what I think is a top 5 athletic. I want to say this, like, if there's a Hall of Fame for ADs, David Benedict's earning his way in. When you drive down Jim Calhoun Road and these championships and these coaches, so to have someone like that leaning into that community, to be a part of it, seeing it grow, feeding off of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that was intentional. And I don't think UConn can be its best university without its alumni, without its fans, right? And friends. Yeah. And so Peter Werth has given $30 million plus to the Werth Institute. He never went to UConn. He was a basketball fan, right? Men's and women's. And then he ended up becoming one of our biggest donors at the university ever. And so the work that they're doing is so incredibly important as our marketing arm, as our front door, and for bringing cohesiveness to the alumni and fan base. And I think they had a rough. UConn fans went through a rough period. Yeah, right,
for sure.
And
you don't have to say that again.
And like, but to be there, to still be there. Blue and white guy, it gets me like tear. I've had dinner with him. Like, he makes me teary because like, it was at the Michigan. This is what he said. He said, a lot of people go to all the games. And then he goes, well, not as many go to all the away games. And I was like, yeah, you got it. None of them shave their head and shave their face and paint
themselves. Yeah.
So no, I mean, I think it's one of the best fan bases. I grew up in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, right down the road. All I knew was UConn basketball. When I heard I knew UConn basketball, and when you drove down 44, it smelled like cow manure. And to come here in 2012 and be part of this and see the 14 run as a faculty, but then to actually be involved and support and contribute to what's happening. It's a dream come true to work with you all and work for and with the fans of UConn.
Awesome. Well, David, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking some time to come on. I think it's really informative. I think everyone's going to learn something out of this conversation. So appreciate you coming on and keep up the great work at the Werth Institute and all you're doing.
Thank you.